Evidently, Colorado cannot have their competitive spring game, which means Bedlam won't be a competitive spring game, which means Mike Gundy gets to rightfully take shots at the NCAA because we all know the hypocrisy. If this was the SEC, they'd be asking for forgiveness instead of permission, and the NCAA would find a way to say, you know what, that's actually a great idea.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things cowboy and cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stillwater. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we get to jump right into the conversation of Mike Gundy grabbing some headlines. And I'm actually very, very appreciative of this one, just like I was very appreciative of him having Ollie Gordon's back. And I was appreciative of him having Bobby Reed's back. Now, sometimes the verbiage gets lost a little bit in translation, just like it can get lost in translation that the Big 12 is continuing to find ways to be innovative. And every time we do that, we get hit in the back of the head by the NCAA or the SEC. And it's kind of funny how those two have been married and conjoined at the hip for quite some time now. Here it is, Colorado not being allowed to play Syracuse in a spring game, which means now the dominoes are going to fall that Oklahoma State cannot have a Bedlam Spring game likely unless you're Mike Gundy, because Mike Gundy right now says, hold my beer. And I'm greatly, greatly appreciative of this one. Mike Gundy's quote might be one of the best of all time. He says, I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to waste my time on who's going to determine what the rules are anymore. Gundy said, according to On3's Thomas Goldkamp, because essentially there's not really enough of them to follow. And I'm not sure how they have grounds to say you can't do that. Like if somebody just goes ahead and does it, what are they going to do to them? That is a remarkable question, Mr. Mike Gundy. Preach it, brother, preach it. Because again, we all know if this was the SEC doing this, they'd be asking for forgiveness as opposed to permission. And the NCAA would do what they normally do, and that would be look the other way. If anybody wants to have an argument as to why the Big 12 might not catch the Big 12 or the Big 10 and the SEC, as much as the monetary evaluations have to come into play, so does this crap. Just like we know for facts that the SEC and the Big 10 get boost, star rating boost, whenever they have commits and decommits that leave certain conferences and come there, or leave there and come to different conferences. There's always been a propagating up of the SEC, but now it's just been kind of more enhanced. At least visually, it's a lot easier for us to see now. And here we are once again with this concept of having a spring game that is beneficial for the entire country. And of course, Deion Sanders is getting the credit for this, although we do have to admit, Mike Gundy was talking about this years ago. Now, it wasn't necessarily a Bedlam scenario, but just like that makes the most amount of sense, this is what makes the most amount of sense for college football. But because Greg Sankey didn't think of it, and it was somebody in the Big 12, and this, even if you wanted to say that this was a Deion Sanders' brainchild, and Gundy hadn't mentioned this multiple times for the last few years, even if you wanted to go with that, I'm okay with that in this scenario because Deion Sanders, right, the cachet of him turning around Colorado, of him just producing a Heisman Trophy winner that plays both sides of the ball. If Deion Sanders doesn't carry enough cachet for the NCAA to understand that this makes the most amount of sense, then it's going to be unlikely that any Big 12 team is going to have success. But now Mike Gundy rolls in like a beast, like a boss, and hopefully he has found a way to solve the problem. The problem is the NCAA. The same organization that has been proven to be feckless and spineless and insanely weak and insanely hypocritical and insanely one-sided. Over the years, we've been able to kind of peel back the layers of the onion that is the NCAA, and they lost all of their teeth throughout the NIL process, the transfer market, all of that. It's gotten so convoluted that even the NCAA knows that they don't really hold a lot of water anymore, which is why there's going to be a new third-party governing system for all of this NIL and impropriety stuff. It's not going to be them. because it's been shown that they have an agenda too. And their agenda aligns with money. And whatever conference has the most money is where the NCAA is going to kind of fall in line with, which means they shouldn't be in existence much anymore. Now, I understand that the academic side of things and, attendance and all of that does kind of filter down through the NCAA. And it isn't really something that a lot of other conferences want to approach, having those minor details resolved by somebody other than the NCAA. It can be done, but nonetheless, it would be kind of cool for the NCAA to stay involved to some capacity. Yet here they are continuously doing this stuff. They will proudly prop themselves up and say, no, we are the NCAA. We make the rules. You can't do that. But then in the next breath, when it comes to NIL or transfers or, we're not involved in that. When it comes to a player signing an NIL deal, leaving a school to go somewhere else, and the NCAA is like, not good, but yeah, we're not going to do anything about that either. Why are we listening to them? Mike Gundy is right. Why does it matter what the NCAA's opinions are anymore? Now, Oklahoma State does have some reservations, as a fan base at least, because the last time we cooperated with the NCAA, we turned ourselves in for a $300 infraction, and we got a year ban from postseason play. Meanwhile, several other schools were getting caught deleting emails, on illegal recruiting trips, talking to recruits during the dead period, paying players' parents. All of this has been found, and all of those schools didn't cooperate. Okay, so we have learned our lesson, hopefully. And maybe this aggressive approach from Mike Gundy isn't just a tongue-in-cheek scenario. Maybe this is really Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, or at least Mike Gundy, stepping up to say the NCAA shouldn't matter. Why do we keep giving them the credence of having any hand in these conversations anymore anyways? They've proven to be a worthless entity time and time and time and time again. So Mike Gundy is right. We should just do it. Just have a legitimate, real spring game. Now, again, I'm not saying that Oklahoma State needs to be the sacrificial lamb here, but something should happen. And the fact that we all kind of tiptoe around, well, you got to be watching out for the NCAA. Why? Why does any team from any conference in any state anywhere still pretend that anything outside of academics should have anything to do with the NCAA? And to pretend that there's going to be academic enhancements because Colorado and Syracuse are going to play a spring game, because Bedlam is going to return to spring game. What benefits are we getting that everybody else isn't getting, other than the fact that maybe Deion Sanders is the one that is getting it pushed to make it realistic? But maybe Mike Gundy shouldn't follow the Deion model. Maybe Mike Gundy should just have a spring game, because at the end of the day, yeah, the NCAA is going to pretend to posture up, and they're going to pretend to want to be something, do something. But we all know it's bullcrap. And we all know that there's so much hypocrisy built into this that it's going to inevitably be part of the preseason, right? If this is already growing legs now, all it's going to take is the Kirby Smarts of the world to introduce it. And then all of a sudden the NCAA will be like, actually, yeah, this is a really good idea. Matter of fact, if the SEC or the Big Ten, if they start pumping out QR codes, nobody's going to talk about the fact that Mike Gundy wanted to do it. Everyone's going to be talking about what a revolutionary idea this is. Brett Yormark doesn't get half of the credit for the things that he's done, even though all the way down to media days and the halftime show and WWE, all of the stuff that he has done, other conferences swept right in, including the SEC. The naming rights, now it's being talked about by the big boy conferences. The private equity, it's being talked about by the quote-unquote big boy conferences. So the Big 12 can come up with things over and over again. They're not going to get credit for them. And then whenever the other two big conferences do it, then it's going to be okay. No. Mike Gundy is absolutely correct here. It's time to stop pretending that the NCAA is the end-all be-all, and we need to check in with Big Papa NCAA. If it's not academics, why? What are we doing? And what are they going to do? It's not a secret anymore that they are worthless. And they pretend to throw their weight around occasionally, but then in the same breath, they turn around and they're like, oh, no, we don't handle that. We don't want no part of that. Oh, Oklahoma State, you gave somebody $300? You're screwed. Actually, it was a coach that you brought in from South Carolina, but doesn't matter. We're going to come after you. No, we're done with that. I don't know if this is going to go anywhere from Mike Gundy's most recent comments, but I'm very glad that he said this, and I'm happy to have his back on this one because he is right. Who is going to be the strong arm that swoops in and says, Bedlam as a spring game gives you both extra credit stuff? No. Makes no sense. Miss us with the bull honky NCAA. Appreciate you on this one here, Mike Gundy. Speaking of appreciation, we can all appreciate when we have an abundance of things. That can also include supplies. Whatever you need to get the most skilled tradesmen inside of you working, you got to give a SupplyHouse. Whether you're into something like plumbing or HVAC or electrical, SupplyHouse is the reliable way for you to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. If you need help on an order, SupplyHouse offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros out here looking for the extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it is your turn to do the same. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Use the promo code SH5 today. That is SH5 for 5% off your first order. Use SH5 for 5% off your first order by going to supplyhouse.com. Again, that is supplyhouse.com. Don't miss out. Jacie Hoyt, the Cowgirls head coach, is not going anywhere. She's signing a new contract, getting a new deal, getting new money. And this is obviously kind of important timing-wise because we've heard several schools like Mizzou have had her as one of the top candidates. So she is a hot commodity. And you cannot lose out on somebody that has been so productive thus far already. I think she's earned this. I think she's deserved this. I think, she learned some things in her first season as a Cowgirl head coach in the NCAA tournament. Maybe that's not the best time to learn things, but she did. And now she found a way to kind of catapult this into a new year, a new time in the tournament, and we get to potentially learn something new. And then she, kicks this whole transfer portal off, grabbing Amari Whiting out of BYU. Hopefully, we have an extra coach kind of in fold here as well. But this whole ordeal with Jacie Hoyt, it does make sense. It is an exciting time because Cowgirl basketball hasn't always been the upper echelon of our minds when it came to athletics. Now, men's basketball, that's a different scenario. And the one thing I will say that is a little hesitant in looking at the men's scenario is Travis Ford had a couple pretty good years, and we gave him a massive contract, and it put us literally a decade behind the eight ball. And then we bring in Mike Boynton and essentially do the same thing, right? He has a couple good, okay seasons, does very well in recruiting, just like Travis Ford did. And then we give him more money. We give him more years. And then the Cade Cunningham thing obviously was worth its weight in gold. But outside of that, it set us back almost another decade. So now we're 2 decades in almost with failed men's basketball coaches. Enter Steve Lutz. And I think all of us can agree, for the most part, what he did this previous season was pretty good. The first year in Stillwater, in a rebuild, late transfer portal addition, so on and so forth. He won some games in the NIT, which, in my opinion, should have kind of been the calling card when the season started. Making the NCAA tournament year one, probably unlikely. Making it to the NIT, to me, that was something that should have been circled. Getting to the NIT and winning multiple ball games, well, okay, that's icing on the cake. So maybe we're in a decent position now. But Jacie Hoyt is coming off of early success. And I think a lot of us appreciate the development. We appreciate the transfer portal. We appreciate the pinpointing in recruiting. Getting Lena Girardi is absolutely massive. After getting Jaden Wooten, after bringing back some of the former Oklahoma girls from other universities to come back to Stillwater to finish out their college careers back in the state they grew up in, all of that, absolutely phenomenal. You cannot allow a Mizzou to swoop in. And surely I'd imagine Mizzou probably had more money to throw around than Oklahoma State, but of course, this does mean something to her. And I'm sure she understands that you could do something very special as a Cowgirl basketball coach. Because again, for years, we expected men's basketball to make a push for the postseason, to make a Sweet 16, Elite 8 style of run. That wasn't the conversation in women's basketball. I didn't know much about women's basketball at Oklahoma State growing up. I know we've had, some years here and there. We've been pretty spectacular. But overall, this isn't a big-time brand. So when you have a Mizzou style of school swoop in, and regionally, it does still kind of make sense for her. You do have to pull the trigger here. Now, hopefully, here's the underlying issue. Hopefully, this is not a Travis Ford, Mike Boynton contract. Hopefully, it's not a 7-year, 9-year, 10-year style of situation. Because that should give everybody a little cause for concern and pause monetarily. It's just the length of the extensions that we've been given on the men's side have been an absolute disaster. So it'll be kind of intriguing to see what numbers shake out for Jacie Hoyt's new contract. But this is a great thing for Oklahoma State. You cannot allow somebody like this that's starting to get the ball rolling on the women's side, to lose out to especially a Mizzou style of school. And now we picked up another transfer from South Dakota State. I know words are hard for me. And I have no doubt when you return some of the core nucleus from this previous season, and of course, we're going to rely upon Staley Hurd, but now we've got the other Hurd in the family to join the fold. And happy birthday. Jacie Hoyt gets her new contract extension on her birthday. This is an exciting time. And other than wrestling, I mean, Cowgirl basketball really did carry us through the early part of 2025 because football season was obviously the biggest punch in the gut that we could have physically possibly imagined. Baseball is terrible. Softball, we're really good. We're not as dominant as we've been the last few years, which is a little bit of an adjustment. That's how spoiled Kenny Gajewski's gotten us. We can get that spoiled with Jacie Hoyt. And it starts with a contract like this. So she's definitely earned herself a little bit more money, a little bit more time. She's definitely earned herself not having to move out of Stillwater, Oklahoma, if it could be helped. This is an exciting time for Cowgirl basketball. I think it's actually an exciting time for Cowboy basketball to some degree as well. Because, again, I don't want to say that we massively overachieved, but I think we did overachieve given the circumstances, given that, what we've been dealing with for the last essentially almost 2 decades outside of the one Brad Underwood year. But yeah, we're not going to make everybody's day bad with that. We're not going to do that. But what we are going to do is talk about somebody else on the side here. And by somebody else, I mean your dollar bills. We've all checked our bank account at some point in time and wondered where did all our money go? And between just dining out, shopping online, and daily entertainment, it's very easy to lose track of where our funds are going. that is where Monarch Money is going to come in and be your personal CFO. It's going to give you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch is not just your typical budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center, so you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just need to stop managing your money and start building wealth as well. When you start using Monarch, you realize how much you were spending on food delivery and other minor things that aren't really necessities. It's going to help you budget smarter and save more. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever if your partner is with Monarch. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without unnecessary stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com. The code is LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for 50% off. That is half off your first entire year by using the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, by going to monarchmoney.com. Go there today to get squared away. Speaking of carrying things through 2025 outside of Cowgirl basketball, it was David Taylor in this wrestling squad. And we just brought in All-American Casey Swiderski from Iowa State. Kind of interesting there, right? A couple years ago, Jordan Williams beat him in the Big 12s, and Swiderski was hooting and hollering and jumping up and down and throwing a fit. And it was kind of funny to see him freak out over an Oklahoma State wrestler and throw a massive temper tantrum, conniption fit on the mat, and now he's a Cowboy. Just like Thomas Gilman threw a conniption fit and wanted to fist fight John Smith and half of the roster when he was in Galgaraiba getting beaten. Man, he's a tried and true hardcore Cowboy, seemingly very early on. And now David Taylor is doing the same things on top of Swiderski. You also brought in a couple Penn State Nittany Lions. And yes, this is a very big deal for a multitude of reasons. One of those being Alex Facundo was the number 3 overall ranked wrestler in America coming out of high school. He's got multiple years left. He could wrestle at 157, 165. And yeah, he's having to deal with K-Sack at 57. You're having to deal with Mitchell Messenbrink at 65. So, just Penn State is difficult. We understand that. That's why they keep destroying records and winning multiple national titles. So getting somebody like him in Stillwater, that's going to be huge. On top of that, you also have another Penn State individual in Gary Steen. Gary Steen is a senior who began his career 125 pounds. He was a top 51 recruit coming out of high school. What was it? Swiderski was like number 2 or number 3 in America as well, coming out of high school. So you're getting 2 of the top guys in the country, in the portal, or even out of high school. And then you also pick up a wily veteran, and Gary Steen, who did wrestle quite a bit a couple years ago at 125. This last year, he didn't really get to do much. His overall record is right around 500-ish. But, you got to have these individuals that are able to come in. And Caleb Fish, was he good previously? Yes. Was he as good as what he displayed at Nationals with the tutelage of David Taylor and Coach Kennedy and Coach Gilman? Absolutely not. Did Wyatt Hendrickson win national titles without David Taylor? No. Did Dean Hamady Jr. win natties without David Taylor? No, he did not. Was Troy Spradley wrestling for natties before David Taylor? The answers to all of those are no. So even though Gary Steen doesn't quite stack up like Facundo or Swiderski, he's still a wily veteran that was good enough to get a full ride after winning, I think, 4 state titles in high school to go to the juggernaut of the sport right now in Penn State. So just because he wasn't able to absolutely dominate at Penn State doesn't mean that he's not just one David Taylor year away from completely changing his trajectory. And not to mention, he has wrestled several times, or at least been in the room to take some leadership when Coach David Taylor and Kennedy were both at Penn State. So you're having somebody that goes back years in the training room and understands the points total bonus system that Penn State was able to kind of live off of, which is what Dave Taylor's trying to incorporate a little bit more here in Stillwater. So you have a really good beginning. So there's no need for David Taylor to get desperate. There's been some things coming out, and I know yesterday was April Fool's Day, so maybe that's part of this. But I have a hard time believing that David Taylor is desperate, like Iowa level or Iowa State level desperate to win a natty. So desperate that you'd bring back AJ Ferrari. It would be a disaster. And I firmly just, I don't think David Taylor is that desperate or unintelligent. AJ Ferrari was a cancer in Stillwater. You could make the argument that he's still kind of a cancer now. I know that, he's quoting some scripture here and there, which is bothersome for me because he'll quote scripture and then turn around and talk about how nobody in this building can compete with him and they're not on the same level and he can only beat himself. And this idea that he's rebranded himself and he's a completely different person. That's the same dude in interviews that he was here when he was running around campus causing a bunch of problems and making ladies arguably very uncomfortable. You do not want to bring that level of cancer back to Stillwater. So I know this is being pushed out, that this might have some real meat and taters to it, and AJ Ferrari really might be considering coming back to Oklahoma State. I don't think David Taylor would do that. I'm hoping and praying David Taylor is not Iowa and Iowa State levels desperate, because we know they are trying to get AJ or at least make a play at AJ. Of course, Iowa's going to do whatever's necessary to keep Angelo and keep giving over dollar bills. They've already made the statement that they're willing to be the A&M of this whole conversation. They're willing to throw money around and NIL to get up to where Penn State is. I think Oklahoma State, with David Taylor and the rest of the coaches and the RTC program and the uptick in recruiting and the transfer portal, so on and so forth, I think we can do that. We can catch Penn State by 2027, 2028 without selling our soul to the AJ Ferrari devil, because that's basically what it would be. I think David Taylor is not that guy. So hopefully this has just been a big April Fool's, ha ha ha, because we don't need that. David Taylor doesn't need that. Oklahoma State doesn't need that. Sport of wrestling probably could do better without the Ferrari ridiculousness, but it is what it is. Hopefully we can do the mark safe from AJ Ferrari ever being on campus again. That would be great. All righty, y'all. That's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor. Hit the like button, share, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. My podcast and people out there, you're everything. I appreciate you. Do what you do. Hit the stars, leave a review. Later, taters.